can be tempting to think that all priests and religious come from a certain kind of family. Now, while studies do show certain characteristics prevalent in those families, we'd be fools to presume that someone's not called simply because he or she doesn't fit in a certain box. I'm going to examine 3 family realities for young men and women called to religious vocation. This video is part 2. Can a priest be called from a small family? Make sure you also catch my 1st and 3rd videos about priests being called from broken families and priests called from non-practicing families. So as I visit with young men throughout the diocese, I notoriously confuse them with their brothers. I'll see one and call him by another name, or even think that I'm talking to one, when in fact I'm talking to the other. Well, some think that the only way they're free from confusion is if they don't have any brothers. Don't worry, I'll still find a way. Well, if someone doesn't have any brothers or sisters, they might assume that I won't even talk to them in the first place, much less confuse them. After all, they might think, well, priests or religious come from a certain kind of family, and evidently my family ain't one of them. Well, could God call someone to the priesthood who is an only child? Could he call someone who has just 1 or 2 siblings? The answer is, of course he could. In fact, he is calling them right now. Well, unlike broken families, part 1, or non-practicing families, part 3, a young man from a small family may not have experienced anything outside of God's plan for his life in this respect. His parents, and only his parents, can know whether their number of children is the result of a genuine openness to new life and responsible parenthood, or the result of excluding God from the conversation. It is never okay to judge a couple's openness to life and love based solely on their number of children. Now, that being said, whether it was because of God's plan or in spite of God's plan, an only child or a young man with 1 or 2 siblings might approach the idea of being a seminarian with different questions than others would have. He might be worried about care that his parents would need as they get older. Well, that's a legitimate question. However, I've discovered in multiple cases with priests in the Diocese of Dodge City that the priest in the family, although very busy, sometimes has more flexibility to be present to his parents than his siblings or his other relatives. Now, a man might also feel pressured to carry on his family name. But let's make an important distinction. The pressure to provide a grandkid is entirely different from a man's desire to be a father, which is a healthy, normal desire that I want all of our seminarians to have at some level. But the idea of shaping a family around someone else's expectation, sort of like attending dad's college or taking over the family business or moving on to the grandparents' farm, is only a good idea if it's actually God's will. Besides, don't be too quick to think that you know what dad and mom want. A discerning man's mother told me just the other day, he thinks that I'm worried about grandkids, but if he were to be a priest, I would be thrilled. You see, parents who love the church know that they will receive far more from a son in the priesthood than they'll ever give. We hear in Genesis chapter 22, verse 16 to 17, the Lord said, I swear by my very self that because you acted as you did, in not withholding from me your son, your only one, I will bless you. After all, what Catholic can really say that he's part of a small family? By baptism, we're all brothers and sisters of Jesus, with God as our Father. Some people are my siblings because we share the same blood. Some are my siblings because we share the same blood of Christ. I'll consider that as permission and forgiveness for confusing anyone.